Hello, everyone. This is Tiffany Schlane, and welcome to Character Day. We have people tuning in from all over the world, from 119 countries at over 130,000 events. So exciting to see the growth this year. I think the world definitely needs this conversation. I'm so thrilled for our next two speakers. We're going to have Soren Gordhamer and Alejandro Alder speaking together, but I get to introduce them. I'm fans of both of their work. So first I get to introduce Soren, and those of you may know him from Wisdom 2.0, but he's been such a vital voice in bringing the conversation of mindfulness into the tech world. And now I'm going to read you his official bio. He's the founder of 2.0, the annual event exploring living with greater mindfulness in the digital age, the author of the book Wisdom 2.0. Soren has interviewed many of the leaders in the technology community, including the founders of Facebook, Twitter, and eBay, on ways to consciously engage in our times. Soren has spoken on or taught mindfulness to people around the world, from youth in New York City's juvenile halls to trauma workers in Rwanda to staff at Google's corporate headquarters. Soren, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
And Alejandro, I heard him speak last summer at a great conference. He does amazing work in the positive psychology space. He's a well-being scientist and a postdoctorate fellow at the Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania. He works under the leadership of Dr. Martin Seligman, the founder of Positive Psychology, who we had on last year. He was wonderful. His research focuses on well-being, education, and public policy. And currently, Alejandro is working with the governments of Australia, Bhutan, Nepal, India, Mexico, Peru, and the USA to infuse curriculum across the country, the schools across the countries, with positive psychology, and to measure the impact of these interventions on youth well-being. And I loved hearing about all of your work all over the world. It was so inspiring. So I think.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with both of you today.
Great. Well, it's fun for me because I'm interested in both of your work, and I get to hear Alejandro interview Soren, and I might pipe in if I have a question, but I'll let you take it away with the first one.
Sure, absolutely. And Soren, what an inspiration and an honor to be interviewing you today. And I will delve into the nuts and bolts soon, but I'll start with kind of a broad question, which I would love you to give your insights on, which is, what would you say the status of the human condition is today? And more importantly, what is the highest that humanity can strive towards during the 21st century?
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll do my best with that. It's a great question.
A little question.
I just from my own perspective, and take this for what it's worth, I would kind of characterize the current state of the human condition as well-intended and distracted. I think there's a lot of well-intended hearts and minds and bodies out there, and people who really care about the earth and care about community and care about connection and care about not just their own growth, but the well-being of the planet. And I think you see this a lot in the younger generation. At the same time, I think because people are often so distracted and so overwhelmed and so just kind of immersed in their phones and the digital world, and who just got more likes than them and who has more followers than them, in this kind of world of social media, that it can be very difficult to know how to pay attention to one another and how to really tend to one's own mind, body, and heart. And I feel like that's a huge challenge in the human condition, at least in Western developed countries. I don't know how much that is in less developed countries, but definitely in Westernized developed countries, I feel like people are kind of like pushed to their max. So they often don't act with their truly generous, giving heart and their greatest quality of presence. And it's not that it's not there, and it's not that they don't care. It's just sometimes inaccessible because of the kind of influx of information coming at them and how much they're trying to process. And the second part, I think our great teaching and our great potential is to rise human consciousness and rise awareness such that we use these amazing technologies for the benefit of coming together and creating a better world, and not simply for just trying to get more clicks and fake news and all that kind of world. I hope we can do it, but I think consciousness needs to rise and communities need to come together and people need to bond together in order to really look at, like, all right, we have these amazing technologies. They can either destroy us or they can bring us together. And how do they bring us together?
Great. And talking about connectivity and consciousness, I know these are core ingredients of what you call wisdom 2.0. So you mentioned good intentions on one end, but then distraction on the other end. And from my understanding, wisdom 2.0 can be the bridge so that those good intentions can translate into positive action that enhance actions that enhance consciousness and connectivity. So as you know, wisdom is one of the 6 core perennial human virtues, and I would personally venture to say that it's the most important one. So how do you define wisdom? And then how do you define wisdom 2.0?
Well, it's an ongoing definition, so I don't necessarily feel like I have set on something, but I generally define wisdom as living in a way that's aligned with our deepest heart and our deepest intentions, and making sure that our life is expressed in that. So if I say, wow, I really love my child, I care about my child, wisdom means actually putting that into action and finding ways to develop and cultivate that even more. So that when we're on our deathbed, whether it's later today or 50 years from now or 30 years from now, or whatever that is, we're taking our last breaths, we'll be able to look back and be like, all right, maybe I didn't succeed in everything, but I always followed my heart. I always actually all right, I did my best to follow my heart. I did my best to live by the values that I know exist inside me, versus get caught up in this whole world of grasping and anger and frustration. And, oh, if I just achieve that, I'll be happy. And there's a deeper level of intelligence that exists in all of us. And being able to harness that and listen to that and align with that, to me, is wisdom. Wisdom 2.0 is simply trying to do that within the context of a digital age, in which we're not pushing away all these amazing technologies, but we're saying yes to the technologies. But more importantly, we're saying yes to our inner life and to meaning and purpose, and knowing that the technologies are kind of useless, really, without compassion, without love, without wisdom. They don't really serve our deepest heart. And so I feel like there's a large number of people, and Character Day, I think, is a part of that. Tiffany is a part of that, who feel like, wow, these technologies are there, but there's something deeper that we need to move through these technologies, and that's the human heart and compassion and wisdom and mindfulness and those things.
It's Tiffany jumping in here for one sec. I love what you said. I loved your definition of wisdom, which was so beautiful. And I do think it's this ongoing process, but aligning your values with how you live is just a beautiful way to describe it. And I think, that's what the tech Shabbats, just as you were talking, like, I love the technology. And then I also love getting away from the technology. Yeah. I have a moment to go inward and daydream and get perspective and be kind of quiet and be with just the people right around me. And I feel like I have this force field around me for my inner life and my family on my tech Shabbats. So, which I've been doing now for 8 years, which I told you I've been getting deeper. But do you think people are going to rise up and create their own boundaries like that? I think you have to. I think we have to. I think, like, when I was a kid, my dad would come home from work and there was no internet, or no cell phones. So he naturally had a contemplative space in his day. Granted, he had 5 kids. But at least there wasn't this influx of information. And now you can pick up your phone, or your phone beeps, and there is nothing built in our day that has any contemplative nature whatsoever. So what do we do about that? And I think we were in this chapter where it's like, oh my God, I have a phone. I can check my email from anywhere. And it's like, oh shit, I have a phone and I can check my email from anywhere. And so I think what you've done with the Shabbat and what other people are exploring doing, I feel like we have to create some barriers. I just got back from Burning Man for the first time. What'd you think? I've done for many years.
Oh yeah, and one of the most beautiful things was just people living without their phones. The phones didn't work there, so it's just people connecting and talking and sharing, and there was this humanness that I just miss. And I feel like I want to just get to know my neighbors and talk to people. And I feel like festivals like that and experiences like that and Shabbats, I feel like in some ways it's our only way through. Otherwise, we're going to get buried in this world and we're going to lose perspective. We forget that, like, it actually doesn't. What really matters is human relationships and human connection. And if the digital can support that, awesome. But if it doesn't support that, so you have 5,000 friends on Facebook and loneliness is higher than it's ever been in our culture. So something is missing in just a digital life, and I think there's something about human connection that our society is rediscovering, possibly slowly, but we're in the process of rediscovering. So yes, I absolutely think creative Shabbats and families and gatherings, and I'm really excited to see what humans will come up with to help do it.
Yeah.
So Soren, if I take away something from everything you said, there's a sense of connectivity and alignment with first and foremost yourself, with others around you, and with the world, right? A harmonious relationship between your values and how you live. Now, technology is indeed often seen as an engine of distraction and even an enemy of mindfulness and living mindfully. But as you have often said, it's a double-edged sword, and you've worked a lot with the technology world to increase and promote mindfulness. So how can we actually leverage technology to increase mindfulness?
That's a great question.
Interfere with it.
One of the things that came up when you were talking was the Women's March that happened in Washington. And that was organized through several people on Facebook, from what I understand, posting that they really wanted to gather and walk in Washington. And then one person found out another person. And so this entire huge event happened because there was a community to share it with and to organize with. And to me, that's just such a beautiful example of somebody with a care and a desire and a concern. They post it, they find like-minded people, but it actually leads to something in the world. It leads to an action, it leads to an expression. And to me, those are the most powerful forms of using social media, is when something gathers us together and it leads to something, versus, just kind of like mind candy of things. And so I definitely think there's examples of that. Humans of New York, which is a beautiful photography blog on Facebook, is also, I think, a really big example. I think asking what our intention is and how do we create posts and content that actually serves humanity is another big piece of that. But it all depends on the state of our consciousness, and I don't think we can be in a hurried, distracted, stressed out place and create good quality content. So I think for me, a lot of it is up to us, like essentially Facebook and Twitter are just empty boxes. If you really look at what they are, they're empty boxes with a whole bunch of ads around them, but they're empty boxes. And what we put in those boxes is up to us. And so how we can take more responsibility for the kind of content we're putting out there, and really asking, is this useful? Is this truthful? Does this support humankind? Or does this bring lightness to the world, bring humor, bring fun, and really creating content that is aligned with that? I think that would be a beautiful practice. And that's what I try to do. And I think more people try to do, is really ask, like, okay, does this serve? Does what I'm going to post serve? And it doesn't mean it can't be funny and playful and goofy, but, does it really serve? Does it inspire people? Does it help people feel their hearts? One of the things a friend and I have started, well, he actually started and I jumped in, it's something called PubMed, public meditation. And what we do is he does, and I do sometimes, is we stream ourselves meditating on Facebook Live, just sitting there doing nothing. And so you're going through your stream and all of a sudden you see people just doing nothing.
I love that.
People watch, and they comment, and then they're like, oh, I want to meditate with you. I'm going to stop too. Or oh, we need to meditate today. And it's like, all of a sudden we're entering this stream of just spaciousness. And so that, I think there's a lot of really creative things we can do like that.
I love that. I'm going to be doing that with you because I'm really trying to meditate more. But one thing that in the last year that I really tried to do, it was about 2 years ago, is I really curated my feed. I really thought, it was like I was curating my brain, because anyone you follow on Twitter or Facebook, they're becoming your stream of consciousness, talking about the stream. And I was finding if it was a lot of negative energy, or I was like, whoa, because inevitably I would see that before I went to sleep, and then it would enter my dreams. And I thought, I need to really curate my stream much more carefully. So it's very curated now, which I recommend everyone should do.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful. And I also think it's also helpful to find worlds that we don't necessarily know and want to learn more about and include them, which I think happened in the last election, where a lot of us woke up and were like, wow, how could so many people think a different way than whatever we did? But I totally am with you.
It's interesting. On Twitter, I like to be very open to a lot of different perspectives and viewpoints, and I follow a lot of different worlds. But on Facebook, it feels like a more intimate space, and I'm much more curated. But Twitter's like my Idea generation, and Facebook is like, don't get into my brain.
Yeah, and it's true though. We're accepting things into our brain, and that have impact, even if it has minor impact. It's still, those images stick with us. And what is it that we really want there? I think that's really important.
Absolutely, Soren. And I've heard you say before that, often in terms of that alignment, that calling, that contribution to our own well-being and well-being in the world, more useful than asking, what should I be doing with my life? And I believe you quoted Eckhart Tolle, which is, what is the world asking to do through me? And so I'm curious, how have you curated your own world, both the 3D human world, if you will, and the digital world, so as to have as much clarity with respect to what the world is asking to do through you? How do you define what your calling is, what your meaning and purpose is, and how do you curate your world to be most aligned with that?
Great question. It's an ongoing experience, an experiment. One of the things I've also really appreciated about Eckhart Tolle, Eckhart says we have two purposes. We have our primary purpose, which is to always be present right here, right now, because everything else is a dream, the past and the future. Like, are you here right now? And the second one is to listen to what wants to come through you. Your secondary purpose is listen to what wants to come through you. Me paraphrasing. And if ever the secondary purpose becomes more important than the primary purpose, you lose focus. So if ever your project becomes more important than your presence, you're out of flow and you've kind of lost it. But if you can keep presence and then the project moves through you, the most powerful, amazing things can happen. But it's not from a place of need. Like, I'm not a somebody now, and if I just get X, Y, Z, I'll be a somebody, or I'm this, and now I'm going to become a that. But it's actually putting consciousness and awareness and mindfulness on the forefront of how we engage. And so for me, that's my practice. And sometimes I totally get lost in, if I can just get this made, if I can just get that creative, I can just do this. But I know that I'm not really coming to it from the right space. And so to me, that's the dance. The dance is to always give the present moment primary, and then whatever projects we are secondary. That said, I was really impacted by the election this last year, and have really been sitting with how do we bring people together in a different way, and how much both our political parties seem to divide us. Like, the Democrats don't seem that interested in connecting and really finding that place of unity, and neither do the Republicans. And what is that force in our society that can come together and bring us together, not based on our mental models of this or that, of things that we care about, but at a different level of consciousness. And so I don't know where that exploration will go, but I realize that we don't have a uniting force in our society right now, and most political parties, from my perspective, seem more interested in winning. And even if I agree with one side more than another, I know that one side winning and the other side winning, that energy, won't get us where we need to go. So I have no idea. That's my inquiry now.
No, I think that's such a great point, because it is this kind of such hyper competitive vibe. Mm-hmm. And, Character Day, in a lot of ways, in our film that we premiered today, is our attempt to remind people what connects us, and the search for meaning and purpose from the Greek philosophers and every different religion and atheists. And, that is what unites us. Yeah. And we can get back to those unifying themes, because we're in such a competitive space that how do you get above that? And I loved the eclipse, because it was just we all were looking up and thinking about our place in the world in relation to everything else, which we rarely do. So I'm with you. I hope Character Day, one of our goals is to bring a unifying element into a difficult time.
Beautiful.
Right. Absolutely. And I think right now, during a time, like Tiffany was saying, of what I would call radical individualism, especially when we can tailor our digital atmosphere to really reinforce everything that I believe in is right. Yeah. How can we find that unifying vision as humanity? And for me, that is my valediction of a question, which is, what do you think the world needs more of right now? And how can you, how can I, how can Tiffany, each of us find our the way we can contribute, or as you say, what the world is asking of us.
Yeah, I think
that vision.
One of the things when you ask that question, what pops into my mind, which I think I connect with a lot and I'm practicing a lot, is to be curious. And when we think we know somebody, we just like close off any learning possible. And I think part of what creates a divide in our culture is thinking, oh, those people, and oh, those people think that way, versus sitting down with that Republican uncle or Democratic uncle, whichever one we don't agree with, and be like, being curious. Hey, tell me about your worldview. How did that worldview come into about? Why is that important to you? What is it that you feel like is necessary for our society? Help me understand your perspective. And just that kind of listening softens so much. But when neither side is listening and neither side is curious, it's like, oh, how dare you think that? And I can't believe. And if we can step into a place of curiosity, it's like, wow, here's this other human being. They have their views for a reason. They didn't come from nowhere. And can we take the time to really listen and really hear them and really take them in and then share our viewpoints? We'll have a place for our opinion at some point, so it doesn't have to go away. But to really make space and be like, really help me understand your world. And I feel like if we could do that with our neighbors, with our family, with those different political differences, religious differences, whatever it is, that has a whole different energy to it. And that would be my wish and my hope.
Oh, I love that's such a beautiful thing. And it was such a setup because our social media campaign for Character Day is what does the world need more of? And we show the strengths, and people are taking anyone watching, and for you both, if you hashtag cultivating character, you're going to see people around the world answering that question. I love curiosity, and I love thinking about it as kind of an open-mindedness, which is and curiosity is a beautiful one, but it's been so much fun to see people doing that. So Alejandro, and I love that radical individualism. That is what we need to go away from. Have more curiosity, Soren. You both are amazing and inspiring, and thank you both.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Soren. It's a pleasure, and all good vibes for an amazing rest of the day.
Excellent. Bye, you two.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.